Paul Metsa's Wall of Power TV is brought to you in part by Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, Two Gingers Irish Whiskey, Grey Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods, and the Solar Arts Building in Northeast Minneapolis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. I'll tell you what, I love the sound of Woody Guthrie in the evening, and we have two gentlemen here that know quite a bit about Woody and are doing a show coming up at the Crooners Lounge celebrating the 75th anniversary of Woody Guthrie's seminal book, Bound for Glory, the book that pretty much changed it for cats like us. My guests are my old friends. I've known them since I moved to town in '78. Two of the finest folk singers, not only in the state, the Midwest, America, but the world. Charlie Maguire. Hey, Charlie.
Good to see you,
Good
Paul.
to see you. Pop Wagner.
Hi, Paul.
Pop.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, and you know, too, this is really fun because you guys are really the second time that we've had live music on the show. So during tonight's this episode of Wall of Power TV, you're going to hear some great music by Charlie and Pop. So, Charlie, tell us, tell the folks out there that might not know about Bound for Glory, Woody Guthrie's book.
Well, it was Christmas of 2017 when I was thinking about dreamers and DACA and all that, and I remember Woody writing in his book, Bound for Glory, we got a copy of it right here, about defending Japanese Americans during World War II. And I looked that up, and I said, wow, that's really cool. And then I looked at the copyright date, and I realized that it's been 75 years since that book came out. And
Light bulb went off.
Yep, light bulb went off, and I said, wow, here's another great Guthrie anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pop and I and Tony Glover celebrated Woody's 100th birthday in 2012. And
that was July 14th, correct?
Right, July 14th. And
Woody's birthday.
Yeah.
Yep. And also Bastille Day, also my mother's birthday.
Right.
Which, wow, that's kind of cosmic when I think about it. But yeah, Woody started writing the book as an outline at the behest of Alan Lomax in 1940. 1943, he showed it to an editor at Dutton, and they gave him a contract for $500 to write the book. $250 went to him on signing, $250 went to his wife and family in Texas. And then the writing began. Marjorie, who he knew, but the romance was kind of just getting started, was on the road with Martha Graham. So she said, move into my apartment and start writing, and try to write 9 to 5.
Right.
I mean, you know, we've all heard stories about Marjorie Guthrie's work ethic.
Yeah.
You know? And when she came back in April, he had a sizable chunk of it done. And he'd write in longhand and then read it, and then Marjorie would type it. And then they took it to Woody's editor, Joy Dorflinger, and she started to arrange it into a reasonable form. She was a real tough editor. As a matter of fact, so tough that the whole front part of the book was lopped off and became Seeds of Man,
Really?
which was published in 1976.
Right. Okay. I did not know that.
So
Two books for the price of one.
It was 2 books for the price of one.
You know, Nora Guthrie, great friend of ours, who has really done such an amazing job with the organizing the all of Woody Guthrie's stuff, and which is now a beautiful museum. I haven't been there down in Tulsa. Have you been there yet?
I haven't been there.
Yeah.
No.
The Woody Guthrie Museum, and she's done such a fabulous job. I wonder if there's any outtakes from the book, you know, when Woody was writing it, that are still around. Do you know the stuff that didn't make it into the book?
Well, we do know that, of course, Seeds of Man came out.
Right.
Then there's, I think, if Marjorie was able to save it, it's probably in the archive.
Right.
But you know, Pop always tells that story about finding a complete copy of another book, right, Pop?
Well,
House of Earth.
House of Earth was a screenplay that he submitted to someone in Hollywood, and nobody knew about it. And this producer found it in a file drawer somewhere long after Woody had passed away, and that was published within the last 10 years,
Yeah,
wasn't
2014.
it? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that.
Now, the book I want to see is the book that he was working on during World War II, which was, the working title was Ship Story. And all of Woody's biographers, Joe Klein, Ed Cray, they all say that he just couldn't quite get it organized because he didn't have the editor
Right.
that he had with Bound for Glory.
Right.
I mean, Joy Dorflinger was there for him every day, every week for 6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the kind of editing that he needed because
Right.
she wrote once, he would type 175 single space pages, you know, in a 24 to 36 hour period.
Wow.
I mean, how do you deal with that?
Right.
You know?
Well, you know, and I've heard stories how Marjorie would go through the wastebasket when she'd come home from wherever she was and just dig up stuff that Woody had thrown away that was great writing.
Right.
Now, let's start with you, Pop. When did you get turned on to Woody Guthrie?
When I was a kid. I mean, that was the records we listened to. My granddad played the banjo with a harmonica in the rack, and then we had Burl Ives, we had Cisco Houston, Woody Guthrie, and we had calypso records. That's what my first and real calypso, you know, from the Virgin Islands.
Right.
Yeah, and it was. Even before Harry Belafonte came along, and my parents were into that, all of that great roots music, and lucky for me, because
Cool parents, it sounds like.
yeah,
How about you, Charlie? When did you turn on to Woody?
I think it was, let's see, I was 14. I was in high school. I had been listening to some of the folk music on radio, which at that time was pretty popular, you know, Brothers Four, Kingston Trio,
Sure.
Peter, Paul, and Mary, you know. Every once in a while you'd get a song that was really different, and it really resonated with me. And as it turned out, that was one of Woody's songs.
Which one? Do you remember?
Oh, I think it had to be This Land Is Your Land first off, you know. And yeah, I was kind of late to the game. I was into, my parents didn't have the folk background that Pop enjoyed. They were in the, you know, big band era.
Sure.
You know, the Dorseys. And
South Pacific.
yeah, all that stuff. And so I kind of came upon this, you know, in a slightly different way. But once I knew it was there, then I was off and running. And the thing that really changed my life, even more than the book, was the Library of Congress recordings that Woody did with Alan Lomax in 1940. And back in those days, remember, it was like a 3-album set,
Right.
both sides, 6
Right.
sides.
Right.
Yeah.
righty.
Hey, this is from Bound for Glory. Working people, winning a war. Well, you'll find a trainload of songs you can sit down and make up a song about. You'll hear people singing your words everywhere you go, everywhere you travel, everywhere you live. Those are the only songs in my head, the only songs in my memory. And you know, they're the only songs that my guitar has any room for. Our cargo was TNT, our ship was the William B. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. Tell you what a boatswain he will do, break your neck and your backbone too. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. There was a poker game on our ship, lost my wages the first damn trip. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. We convoyed across the sea and unloaded in Sicily. Over the waves and gone again, over the waves and gone. Over he'd go. Got hit by a torpedo. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. We were tossed and pushed and pulled in the jaws of a wolf. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. With her head down, the Willie B put a shoulder to the sea. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. As our strength was wearing thin, the African coastline took us in. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone. Over the waves and gone again. Over the waves and gone.
Woody Guthrie also had quite a bit of an influence on a young man from the East Coast who played banjo named Pete Seeger.
Yeah.
And you got a chance to meet Pete.
Yeah, got a chance.
Early on.
Yeah, early on. I met him through actually another contemporary of Woody's, Lee Hayes. Lee Hayes had retired from the Weavers, and he had moved upstate out of New York City, and was living in a little town of Croton-on-the-Hudson, and gardening, and just being a Buddha to you know, to all the kids who would knock on his door, you know, and with that kind of tutelage, you know, I found a little bit out more about Woody, but it was really I always pushed really hard to find out more than was out there in those days.
Right.
So finally, I think, if not from me, maybe from hundreds of others, Marjorie Guthrie finally employed Joe Klein to write a book called Woody Guthrie: A Life.
It's a beautiful book.
And that's where Tony Glover comes in to this whole thing. Because,
And let's talk about Tony Glover. Tony, of course, I first got hip to Tony by reading his record reviews in Rolling Stone.
Right.
In the late 60s and early 70s. And then, of course, not long after, got hip to Spider John Kerner with his record Spider Blues. I'd heard about Kerner Rand Glover, hadn't heard him, finally heard that first great record. So Tony, besides being a great a writer, phenomenal harmonica player, put out a harmonica music book on Oak Publications, and has, you know, quite a bit of other credentials to his name, but he's going to be part of this great show you're doing at Crooners. So tell us about how Tony joined this organization.
When the book came out, Joe Klein's book came out, Tony took the review for City Pages. It was called the Twin Cities Reader in those days.
Right.
And I took the review in the Star Tribune. And Tony's review came out first. And after the...
See how he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he's always first. And then after the review came out on the Strip, my review, I'd never met Tony. I mean, I'd seen him around, pop. I mean, I've met everyone practically in music through this guy here. But I'd never met Tony to talk to. All of a sudden, I get a package in the mail from Tony Glover. And it's a small 6-inch reel-to-reel. He says, you know, I really liked your review. He says it was very insightful, and here's a few things I've been collecting over the years. And it was nothing but Woody Guthrie outtakes.
Really?
Yeah. So I took them, I called up Pop right away, and you talk about the library.
Yeah.
That's the first place we went because neither of us had a
reel-to-reel
reel-to-reel tape
machine,
recorder.
yeah.
So we went down there and listened to Tony's outtakes on the tape recorder. So Pop and I and Tony have really been kind of collaborating, first in that kind of a way and now more in a musical way, since 1980.
You know, the first time I met Tony Glover, I'd seen
What
him
a guy.
play. What a guy. My first album, Paper Tigers, came out in 1984, and it had a lyric sheet in it. And I was used to do Tuesday nights at the 400 bar with my band Cats and the Stars. And I was setting up in the afternoon, and Willie Murphy and Tony Glover were perusing the lyrics. And of course I knew Willie, and so I walked up to introduce myself to Tony, at which point he took out his switchblade and started to polish it. So I've got nothing but respect for the guy. But anyway, that's the first time I met Tony Glover.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the show going to be like?
Well, when we did the anniversary show in 2012, and we did a number of them, usually once or twice a year, we actually took it on the road too. It was strictly Woody songs and, you know, a little bit about each one, you know, as far as we knew based on our research and all the collective knowledge that we had. But we all knew that we had to do something different this time because it's about the book.
Right.
You know, I mean, the music is there, but the book is the thing.
Right.
So what we've got this time is we've got narration from the book. Starts in the front, ends in the back. And we give Pop the part that he discovered after I've read it about 4 times.
The
But
book
never
starts
quite
in
put it
Minnesota.
together.
Yeah. The first chapter of
That's
the book,
right.
they're riding a freight train through Minnesota.
I don't know if you've heard, but Will Kaufman's got a new book coming out by University of Oklahoma Press in the fall, I think, of this year, called Mapping Woody Guthrie.
I just saw that.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. That looks really
That's
phenomenal.
about all I know. But you talk about, you know, was he ever in Hinckley?
Right.
Maybe we'll find out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's that great story, and I've heard it from Larry Long, I've heard it from Nora Guthrie, and I heard it from Pete Seeger himself. And it was, so I'll tell Pete's version. So Pete and Woody were up, I believe, in the mid to late 30s, maybe early 40s, playing at a lumberjack camp, logging camp,
Yeah.
somewhere in northern Minnesota.
Yeah. Probably would have been about 41.
You okay?
Yeah.
So they were playing and playing all night long and not getting a ton of response. Mostly Finnish lumberjacks, and you know what they say about the Finnish man who loved his wife so much, he almost told her. So they played for these, all night for all these Finnish lumberjacks, and then woke up in the morning and we're getting ready to go, and the camp foreman comes up and goes, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Well, we played last night. We got absolutely no response." And the foreman goes, "They loved you."
Yeah, that's right. They could have listened to you all night. Yeah, I've had audiences like that up there.
I had that happen to me at the pork producers convention in Iowa. No response until, and then the show was over and dinner was over and everyone came up and told me how much they loved it. I guess some people are like that.
Right? Yeah, some people are like that. Now, you guys have really, I mean, you just don't play shows. In your case, Charlie, you've written plays, you perform plays. You were also, what I loved, you got to tell the people out there in Wall of Power TV land about how you talked the Park Service into hiring you as the singing ranger.
Yeah. I don't have my flat hat today, Paul. Yeah. Well, you know, they like the work that I did so much for our Minnesota State Parks, which is hands down one of the greatest park systems in the country, if not the world.
Right.
And the second oldest state park system in the world. And they liked what they were doing there. And the government at that time, in the early 1990s, had a new idea. They knew there wasn't any more wild land.
Right.
You know? So they said, well, why don't we make urban areas parks? So by act of Congress in 1988, they created the Mississippi National River Recreation Area, which included St. Anthony Falls in it, because that's the only natural waterfall on the entire river. And they said, make a park out of it. So there's all of the wonderful National Park Service administrators saying, well, this is great, but how are we going to tell people about it?
Right.
You know? And then one of the rangers said, my supervisor, Ron Erickson, a man who will always be big in my heart, said, You know, I've been watching this guy go around the state for state parks, and he wrote a bunch of songs about it, and he talks about the history, and you know, his information is really good, and why don't we hire him to do the same thing?
Wow.
And that was my government job.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
What a
about
great gig.
9 years.
1, 2, 3, 4. My wife would come in this morning from Texas down the line. In the big Grand Central Station, that clock was striking 9. She rode the Southwest Limited on the New York Central Road. She chartered 16 coaches and brought the kids along. She brought the kids along. She brought the kids along. She chartered 16 coaches and brought the kids along. Subway trains are crowded when they make a stop. You're at the wrong darn station when the crowds they push you off. They push and pull and heave and shove and squish and squirm and crowd. And when your station comes along, well then you can't get out. We hooked the train and rode an hour to see the Bronx Park Zoo. We landed out in Brooklyn on Utica Avenue. You gotta change your subway train at every stop or two. And every time you come out wearing a different pair of shoes. A different pair of shoes. A different pair of shoes. And every time you come out wearing a different pair of shoes. We loaded in a taxi to take us across the town. It registered a nickel every time the wheel went round. He charged us $11.87. And down in Texas, that's enough to pay 6 months of rent. To pay 6 months of rent. To pay 6 months of rent. And down in Texas, that's enough to pay 6 months of rent. Now, friend, if you are from the South, you're either way out west, and you got a wife and children you love your very best. If you come to New York City, I wish you very well, but you better bring a wagon load of greenback dollar bills. Greenback dollar bills. Greenback dollar bills. You better bring a wagon load of greenback dollar bills.
They're going to be doing a show at Crooners coming up. Tell us again quickly when the show is. I know one show sold out, how to get tickets, and then tell the people how they can track you two down individually as well.
Yeah, go
Well,
ahead,
we're
Bob.
going to be doing the show with Tony Glover.
Right.
He'll be at Crooners with us on the 28th of July. And you can call Crooners, you can go to Charlie's website, my website. Mine is popwagner.com. I think that's easy to remember. Yours is,
CharlieMaguire.com.
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
a coincidence.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
PaulMetsa.com.
Yeah.
You know, it was funny when I was, before we started getting ready to tape the show, I was just watching Pop work his cell phone. And I remember the first time I saw a hardcore biker with a cell phone. You know, who would have thought? And now folk singers with cell phones and
Yeah.
websites.
Yeah.
Crazy modern world we live in.
That's
I
right.
wrote a great song about a cowboy using a cell phone.
Really?
Yeah, because he was, to get reception, I saw this.
Okay.
For real. I was helping with a cattle roundup, and it was in the driftless region of Wisconsin where there's hills and valleys. And to get a reception, he was standing in the stirrups and reaches his phone up as high as he could get it in the air. And I said, well, that's got to be a song.
Can you recite a few lyrics?
I got a cellular, smartphone, laptop, fax machine, hay prices, cattle futures on my computer screen.
Why don't let's talk a little bit about what a phenomenal folk music scene Minneapolis has been for the last 50 years.
Well, I heard about it growing up in Ohio in the 60s. I graduated high school in 67, and a friend of mine was already playing me Kerner Ray and Glover blues, rags, and hollers. And then I went to college in northern Wisconsin, and we started a little folk festival up there, and most of the people that came to it were from here, from the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And both audience and musicians. So after seeing that and taking a couple of visits down here, I just stayed. It seemed like the place to be. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
It's really, and it's a welcoming, friendly scene too.
Yeah,
Well-
that's absolutely, because you know there's folk music is a kind of thing where there could be competition, like you'd find traveling around maybe in the Boston area or some you know, the New York area down in the village, and you always hear people complaining. Something would happen, someone would do something to somebody else or something like that. That stuff never happened here.
Right.
You know, plus not only that, not only was there no competition and just general respect for what everyone was doing, there was also this, and thanks to your forebears, you know, from Scandinavia, people saying, well, why don't we do a cooperative?
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
Let's do a cooperative record label. And while we're at it, how about a cooperative booking agency too, you know? I mean, that stuff didn't happen anywhere else.
Right.
And I'm on the board of directors of the Union Local 3073, like you are, Paul, like you are, Pop, you know, members. And
let's
I tell people, I say, you know, you guys can work together on this. This is the way we did it.
It's been so great talking to you guys, and of course, seeing you again. Like I said, there's nothing better than the sound of Woody Guthrie in the morning or evening. And sum up, Charlie, and then you, Pop, what Woody Guthrie means to you and means to America at large.
Well,
especially in these times.
Yeah. Woody was so far ahead of his time as far as standing up for people who had no voice. And migrants, immigrants, Native Americans, African Americans, people without work, people without homes. I mean, I don't think he would mind being called an ambulance chaser, because Woody was an ambulance chaser. Whenever there was something going on that was really getting mixed up, there he was with his guitar, you know? And that's why when Tony Glover and Charlie Maguire and Pop Wagner get together, we kind of want to reflect that kind of passion that Woody had.
And carry on the tradition.
Right, for people who just need a voice.
Right.
And that's, whether it was 1943 when the book came out, or 2018 with some of the stuff we're facing now, his stuff is fresh as the day he wrote it.
Absolutely. And Pop, same question.
Well, the specific songs, I mean, This Land Is Your Land, we all learned in elementary school. It could be the national anthem.
Right.
It really could.
It is for all intents and purposes, right?
Songs like Deportees, the song of the Deportees, Pastures of Plenty.
Yeah.
Right.
They're totally relevant today, just as much as when the day he wrote them, and all of his material is like that.
Charlie and Pop, I wish you great success with this show, and it's really been a pleasure not only chatting with you, but listening to you play.
Thanks, Paul.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for watching Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. We'll have a new show next week, and we'll save you a seat.